Hello everyone. Hi, hello, it is me, it is I. Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Wendy Ivy Martinez, also known as the Geek Goddess here on YouTube. And today we're going to be talking about the worst of 2024. In 2024, I read a total of 100 books. That's the most I've read in a year by far. And we had a lot of great ones, okay? We had a lot of great ones. We had a lot of average ones. And then we had some that were downright terrible. And for some reason, I just didn't DNF them. Yeah, I just didn't DNF them. These could be books that were initially 3 stars or so, and the more I thought about them, the more I realized how much I didn't like them. Or just books that from start to finish, I was like, I hate this. So today we're going to be talking about the worst books that I read in 2024. So let's go ahead and get started. So coming in at the very, very end of our lowest rating is Diavola by Jennifer Thorne. This is a book that I read towards the beginning of the year, and I had such high expectations. I mean, the cover alone was drop dead gorgeous. And I even thought about buying the physical copy, but I'm so glad I didn't, because it would have been unhauled by the end of the year, because the books that I don't like, I'm just going to unhaul them. And in this one, we are basically following our main character. She goes on a trip with her family to Europe. And when she goes on this trip, they uncover that they are staying in this really haunted villa in Italy. I believe it's Italy. I think it's Italy. And so when I went into this, I was expecting a terrifying tale, right? A terrifying story that had a lot of vacation vibes, right? I was expecting a summer vacation because that's what we are told in the synopsis. However, it started off in the vacation home and it continued from there. So you follow her back home and all of that. I wasn't expecting all of that. It was a combination of that. Plus, I didn't like any of the characters. I didn't like any of the main character's family. I didn't like the main character herself. I just wasn't a huge fan of it. I think initially I rated this 3 stars, but the more I thought about it, the more I'm like, I really didn't like this. So it went down to like about 1.5 to 2 stars for me. I just didn't like this book at all. Like, is it memorable? Do I remember a big portion of it? Yes. Did I like it? Do I like what I remembered? No. And I wish I could erase it from my brain. So that's Diavola. If you want to see my full thoughts on the Diavola book, I did a book where I was reading a whole bunch of new releases from 2024, and Diavola was one of them, so I'll put the link to that video here. The next one is from another video, another reading vlog that I did where I was reading YouTubers' favorite books, and I read episode 13 by Craig DeLuey. And this is another one that I was expecting. I had such high hopes. I was expecting, and at first it really did resemble Grave Encounters. It reminded me of Grave Encounters. And I was hoping what I felt for Grave Encounters, how much I really enjoyed that story, I thought I was going to feel the same way about episode 13. And at first, it was really good and really intense. And I loved I loved the documentary style that we were following. The audiobook was fantastic. But at the very, very end, it just lost me. I absolutely despise the ending. And at the very, very end, like the epilogue, I just hated it. It started out so strongly, and then it just took a nosedive, and I just didn't like it. Again, this is another one that is pretty memorable to me. Maybe because this is the first book that I read that takes place that has to do with like ghost hunting and ghost hunters. But it really was not what I was expecting. I was expecting a lot more, and the ending just fell very flat for me. So it ended up landing in my top worst books of the year. So that is episode 13 by Craig DeLuey. I did a whole reading vlog where I tried reading Dark Academia for the very first time, another reading vlog that I did, and I picked this baby up. This is Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. I was expecting to love this book. I love the Dark Academia aesthetic. I love Dark Academia music. I love the vibes. So I was really hoping, desperately hoping that I was going to enjoy the Dark Academia genre. And unfortunately, of all the books that I grabbed from that genre, I don't think I rated any higher than like a 3-star. And Ninth House was one of those books that felt very flat for me. It was, I don't even know, the plot was just not plotting. The characters were so flat to me. They didn't feel multidimensional. They didn't feel real. And just the whole synopsis as a whole just felt very, I don't know, it just didn't feel climactic at all. In this one, we are following our main character, and she gets into a elite Ivy League college because she has the ability to see these sort of entities that most people, called grays, I believe, and most people are not able to see them. And so that's the only reason why she gets in. Is she smart enough to go there? No. Does she get the grades to go there? No. Does she have like rich parents that paid for her to go there? No. It's literally just because she's able to see these entities. So I was expecting it to be a dark mystery that I just was obsessed with, and it was very slow paced. I feel like this is more character driven than it is plot driven, and maybe that's where it lacked for me, because I tend to like more plot driven books than character driven books. But even then, the character, like I said, felt very flat to me and not multidimensional at all. I just didn't really like anything. Nothing made me, there was nothing that made me like want to be like, yes, I want to continue with the series. I am perfectly fine DNFing this series and just never thinking about it again. And I'm going to do that. Even though I own Hellbent, I don't think I'm ever going to pick it up. So that is The Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. Shifting from Dark Academia horror to a fantasy romance, we got From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout. I am so sad that I did not enjoy this. I don't know if it's because 2024 was a very difficult year for my mental health, and I suffered a lot mentally. And I don't know if it was a case of picking up the right book at the wrong time that did it, but this book just felt so flat for me. It had everything that I could have possibly asked for. It had vampires, it had an enemies to lovers romance, it had a stabby female main character, it had a love interest that has been compared to Astarion from Baldur's Gate, which I was really excited about, and unfortunately, it didn't work. It didn't work. I had such high hopes for this. Jennifer L. Armentrout was the author that I read as a teenager that first introduced me to enemies to lovers. I was expecting so much from this book, and maybe that's where it fell flat. Maybe it's a combination of that and the fact that I was dealing with some mental things. This book, we are basically following our main character, Poppy, and she is raised to be like a maiden. And when she becomes a certain age or something like that, she's given to the gods as like a sacrifice, and she knows that she's going to be sacrificed, and she has no problem with it. The only thing that she wants to do is live out the last of her little life that she has to its fullest, and of course she's not able to do so. And then she gets a bodyguard, and this bodyguard ends up not being what anyone expects him to be, and a romance ensues, a forbidden romance ensues. And so I really thought that this was going to be a lot more fun than it actually was. Was it fast-paced? Yes, the pacing was very fast. But the thing is, when I don't like the main character, I have a very hard time of getting into the story. And I did not like Poppy at all. I found her very whiny and annoying, and I just could not stand her. Like, I understand that she's upset. I understand that she does not want to be sacrificed. I understand that she doesn't want to be a maiden. She wants to live a normal life. But the whining that this woman does, it's just so annoying, and I just couldn't handle it. So this ended up falling very flatly for me. This was like a 1 or 2 star when I rated it. When I first initially rated it, right off the bat, I knew I didn't like it. I think I put 3-star at first, and I was like, you know what? No, I bonked it down a star, and I think I bonked it down another star because I'm like, the more I think about it, the more I am just so disappointed in this book. And it sucks because I do have more of this. I have more of this series. I think I have like book 5 because I bought it on sale because I was really hoping that I really thought I was going to be reading the whole series. I'm not. I'm going to be DNFing this series. It's just not happening. So that is From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout. The next book in my worst books of the year is going to be Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. So Silvia Moreno Garcia, I don't have a good relationship with this author. I read one other book by her called The Gods of Jade and Shadow, and I was disappointed in that one, which is very unfortunate because Silvia Moreno Garcia is a Mexican author, a Mexican-American author, and I really wanted to read more Mexican authors because I'm Mexican-American, so I really wanted to read more of my culture and my heritage, and this story takes place in Mexico, and I really, 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 again, wanted to like this, but I just didn't. It takes place in 1950s Mexico, and we are following our main character who wants to study or something like that, but her father says, okay, you can study, but you have to check on your cousin first. So she goes to check on her cousin who lives in this very Gothic home that's haunted, right? Or is it? And we follow our main character as she tries to figure out what exactly is going on. This is a very dark, Gothic horror tale. However, it's not scary. It's very anticlimactic. And again, a lot of these characters just fell flat. And I don't know what it is about reading about like the 50s or back in the day where women are very like suppressed just because they're women that makes me feel some type of way. Usually I can look past it if we have a strong enough FMC, and of course if there's a lot of social commentary on why obviously a lot of social commentary on how unfair it is and unjust it is, the way that women were treated. But I don't know, even though yes, this was a pretty strong female main character, I just did not feel connected to her or any of these characters at all, and I just did not care when anything happened to any of these characters. I honestly already forgot most of what happened in here, even though I didn't read it too long ago, and it's just been completely erased from my mind. So this was unfortunately a disappointment, and not only that, I did own a few more books or I think at least like one more book by Silvia Moreno Garcia, but because she disappointed me yet a second time, I just don't think I'm going to be picking anything up by her anymore. I just don't think her writing style is for me. And I know this is a very beloved book, but for me personally, it wasn't. Shifting gears, we're going to another one that I'm very, very sad about, okay? I want to be a Brandy Sandy girl so bad. I envy the Brandy Sandy girls. I envy the girls, the people that enjoy Brandon Sanderson so much, because I have read 3 or 4, I attempted to read like 4 books from him. Only one have I enjoyed. The other 2 have been DNFs, soft DNFs, but DNFs. And then there's this one that was a 1-star for me. And this is his only, like, I guess considered fantasy romance, one of the only fantasy romances that he's made. And in this one, we are basically following a world where the magic system relies on colors. And to be honest, I don't even really remember too much about what really went down. We followed 2 women. One of them had to be married to some god. And then there was another one that was like trying to save her sister from her having to marry this god because she was supposed to go instead. I want to completely erase it from my memory, but at the same time I don't, because I have made it a mission to get through the Cosmere by the end of this year, and if not this year, by the end of next year, I really want to attempt to really get into Brandon Sanderson. I just think I started with the wrong book. I've been told that the best way to start with Brandon Sanderson is to first read the Mistborn trilogy, which I've been saying that I'm going to do, and I just haven't, just because those books are so thick and I know it's going to take me a long time. And so I attempted another route, and unfortunately that's not working out for me. So I'm going to take the route that everybody says to take and start with the Mistborn series first. Once I'm deep enough in the Cosmere, I might give this book another try and maybe I'll like it better. The second time around, maybe I'll read it physically instead of listening to the audiobook. Maybe that's where it lacked for me. Maybe I needed to read the physical instead of listening to the audio for it to have more of an impact. Or maybe this could just be another one of those right book at the wrong time sort of deals. The next book that we're going to be talking about is another horror book. I realized I have a lot of horror in this pile of books that I didn't enjoy. This is more of like a grief horror, and I was expecting it to be better, I want to say. Okay. This one is Monstrilio by Gerardo Samano Cordova. And this is one that, again, could be another one because my mental health was not the greatest in 2024. That maybe that's why this could be another case of the right book at the wrong time. But to be honest, I don't think that's the case. In this one, we are following our main character, Magos, and her son passes away from an illness in his bed. Then the mother takes his lung, because the lung was what was supporting him for so long, and she feeds it until it becomes a little monster. This is a Frankenstein retelling. It's very grief horror, and the story was just so slow paced that I just did not enjoy it. This is a book that, like, it's not about the plot. It's not about what's happening. It's more about the grieving, the effects of grieving. And I just couldn't, for some reason, I just couldn't connect with it. And even though I have lost someone that that was very, very close to me, so I understand what grief is, I just couldn't connect with this. I don't know what it was. It could even just have been the fact that I was listening to the audiobook, and when we shifted point of views and perspectives, I got very lost because it didn't tell me that it was shifting perspectives. It was like the same narrator or a similar voice or a similar narrator, and I didn't know that we were shifting perspectives until I was like, wait, why are they talking about themselves as if they're a third person now? And then I realized we were shifting characters. It literally, I was like halfway through the book when I realized we've been shifting characters this whole time. We've been shifting POVs. Why? Why have we been shifting main characters? I didn't know. And maybe the audiobook lost me, but I also think it was the pacing. Again, I like books that have a faster pace, and this just didn't give me anything. It just did not give me anything, and unfortunately, the very beginning hooked me, but the more I read, it just fell flat after that. Like, the best scene was the beginning because it was so shocking and it kept you interested, and then it just lost you. Like, the most interesting that happened throughout the whole book, I think, is going to be what happens at the very, very beginning of the book. It's terrible, and it's heartbreaking, but that was the most interesting part of the whole book, if that makes any sense. So this was a flop for me. Didn't like it. Sorry. Another horror. I have so many horror books. 2024, I had some great, amazing, fantastic horror books that I loved, but there was a lot of duds, and that includes this one. This is I Was a Teenage Slasher by Stephen Graham Jones. In this one, we are following a surprise, teenage slasher. We are following our main character from La Mesa, I believe, Texas. La Mesa, Texas? Yeah, La Mesa, Texas, which also I didn't know was where the Hill House is, the real Hill House is in La Mesa, Texas as well. I didn't know that. But we're following La Mesa, Texas, and we're following this kid who decides to become a serial unaliver because he has a peanut allergy and he doesn't think that that's fair. Literally, that's what I found out in like the first few chapters of why he wanted to become a serial unaliver. Was that sarcasm? I don't know. But if it was, I just apparently did not catch on. And then from there ensues unalivings. And I literally just read this book about a month or 2 months ago, and I already forgot everything that happened in this book. Everything that happened in this book, other than the fact that I know that he became a serial unaliver because he has a peanut allergy. From that alone shows you how anticlimactic, and even though the plot is supposed to be fast-paced, I was so lost and bored and confused and not attached to any of these characters, including our main character. I wasn't rooting for him. I wasn't rooting for anybody. I didn't care when he unalived these people. I didn't care when he told me he had a peanut allergy. I don't care. I just did not care about anything in this book. Why I didn't DNF it, I have no effing idea. But it just was not, it was just not it. This book was just not it. Another book that was a letdown for me is going to be this one here. This is Out There Screaming, which is a collection of horror stories by Black authors, and it is edited by Jordan Peele. I was so excited for this. You guys have no idea how excited I was about this book. The fact that it has all these amazing horror authors, right? Specifically Black horror authors. And it's edited by Jordan Peele, who literally makes some of my favorite movies ever. I was so disappointed by the execution of these books, these stories. They were just unmemorable. There was a couple in here that I enjoyed, but then I just completely forgot after I finished reading this. It was just not memorable, not captivating. And I just think that I set the bar so high on this one that the execution just fell so flat. And it makes me so sad. And you have no idea how effing mad I am and disappointed that this didn't meet the expectations that I held them to. But it just didn't. And again, that crushes my effing soul so bad. Like, you have no idea how much that upsets me, because this was like one of the most, if not the most anticipated release of 2024 for me. Shifting gears to the worst of the worst books, the top or bottom, I should say, of the barrel books. Coming in at number 3 of worst books that I read in 2024 is The Last Horror Book that's going to be in here, and that is I Found Puppets Living in My Apartment Walls by Ben Farthing. The concept of this book was very interesting. In this one, we are following our main character, and he ends up inheriting the house, or staying at the house, where I think it's his grandpa was the puppeteer. And they actually used to film the puppet show called Our City Street, which I believe is pretty much like Sesame. I think it's Sesame Street. It's Sesame Street, but it's called Our City Street. And the grandpa ends up mysteriously just disappearing. And the first night that Johnny is in this apartment, brick house, whatever, he sees the puppet at the end of his bed. And when he wakes up the next day, he sees the puppet go into the wall. And when he wakes up the next day, he thinks that maybe he might have dreamt it. But then when he finds, I think it was like the fur or something, I don't know what he finds, he realizes that it was not a nightmare, that this actually happened, and he thinks that his grandpa is still there and is playing with him by using the puppet. And so he goes through the wall with his cousin. I think it's his cousin. Is his cousin his sister? I think it's his cousin. And they discover this labyrinth where the puppets are living inside his walls. Tell me why I thought this book was going to be dark, a horror book, but I thought it was going to be humorous. I thought it was going to be like dark humor, and maybe it's because it didn't meet the expectations that I had for it, that I didn't like it. But there was just something about this book that I just didn't enjoy. I just didn't enjoy it. It felt like, I don't know. It was dark and depressing, and I usually like that in my horror books, but I don't know what it is about this one that it just irked me. Maybe, again, it's because I was expecting a humorous horror and not the darkness that it was. So going in, just know that this book is not funny at all, and it's dark. It's very dark. Okay, and you're going to get nothing but darkness, and more darkness. And I usually love that. In fact, my favorite movies, literally pretty much all of my favorite movies of all time, are dark ass movies. Okay? They're dark movies with dark endings, dark stories, and that's usually like my favorite shiznit. I love that. But I don't know what, it just, I can't even tell you what it was about this that I didn't enjoy, but I just didn't. And so this is my number 3 for worst books of 2024. Coming in at number 2, Hall of Smoke. This is a book that I read for one of the, I think it's like the first vlog that I did during 2024. As you can see, this is tabbed. Like I said, I was expecting to like this. It's tabbed. That's how you know I was expecting to like it. And in this one, we are following our main character, and she is basically a like priestess, or she's an Ianki. She's a priestess for the goddess of war, and her people end up getting unalived, and she has to go on this adventure to try to avenge her people for this goddess. And so we see her go on this adventure, and this book is another one that started off so good, and it started off so promising, it started so fast-paced, and then it just sort of dulled out, and then I just stopped caring. I stopped caring about the main character. I stopped caring about any of the other side characters. I stopped caring about the plot. I stopped caring about everything. By the end of this book, I'm like, I don't care that this is a series. This is not gonna, I'm done. I was just so disappointed in this one. I hated it. Like, I hate it. This is one that I can sincerely say, like, every time I think of it, I'm like, I don't like this at all. Like, I want to get rid of it, never think of it again. I did not like it. I bought this one on a whim where I chose books blindly, just based off of the cover. Like, all I would know is the cover. I wouldn't look up the synopsis. I wouldn't look up the reviews. I was just picking and reading books blindly, and this was a flop. Fortunately, though, this was the only flop, and the other two ended up in my top 20, are ending up in the top 2024, the top 24 books in 2024. But this was a dud. And this was my first, maybe it's because it was my first disappointment of 2024 that it ended up at number 2. Maybe it's just that every time I think of it and I look at it, I'm like, I want to get rid of this. I hate this so much. I just didn't like it. It was flat, and I could care less about anything that happened in here. So, there's Hall of Smoke. Number 1 in the most disappointing reads of 2024 is Promise and Fire by Jasmine Walt. I bought this one. I actually bought the whole trilogy because I was expecting to really love this. I kept seeing it on Facebook advertised as, if you read Fourth Wing and you have a hangover, if you want to read something similar to Fourth Wing, read this. If you liked ACOTAR and Fourth Wing, read this. And I was like, oh my gosh, this must be fantastic. This sounds so great. And I bought it. And I bought the whole trilogy. I didn't just buy book 1. No, I bought books 1, 2, and 3 because I was expecting to like it this much. And in this one, we are following our main character. She is a fae. Her name is Adara. And Adara didn't know that she had powers until she accidentally gets her necklace ripped away from her that was controlling her power, and she realizes that she's very powerful, and she has to run away because there's a prophecy about her, and the king has been looking for her. So she travels and she finds this little cave, and she ends up finding this like dragon, but dragons are supposed to be long gone. The dragon wakes up, and then he's this like sexy male, I guess. And the male knows, we follow both of your point of views, so the male knows that Adara is like his mate, but he doesn't want to be mated to her because Fae and dragons are like enemies, but he can't help but feel attached to her. In this, I can't even tell you where to begin with this. This book was nothing, there was nothing special about this book. And I feel so bad saying that because I'm pretty sure like Jasmine and Walt worked very hard on this, but for me, this is a book that you would probably enjoy if you have never read fantasy romance. If you are not familiar with fantasy romance or you're very new to fantasy romance, you would probably really enjoy this book because then all of this would be new to you. However, me having read a lot of fantasy romance, there was nothing new in this book. No concepts were new. Nothing stood out. It just felt like every other fantasy romance out there. And it literally felt like the author was like, let's take all these tropes that people love. Let's take dragons. People like dragons, right? Let's put dragons in here. People like Fae, right? Let's put Fae in here. People like fated mates, right? Let's throw that in there. People like enemies to lovers, right? Let's throw that in there. And just mixed it in this big old pot and tried to make it into a story and try to make it work, but it just did not work. It just did not work. Okay? She was trying to make enemies to lovers and fated mates work at the same time, and there has been people like Sarah J. Maas that has done it in the right way where it makes sense, but then there's this, and our main character Adara did not like the male interest, right? Or she's attracted to him, but she doesn't want to be attracted to him, and she tried so hard to make him an enemy. But this guy just kept fawning over her. And when we read his perspective, it was just so... I'm surprised that a woman wrote this, to be honest with you, because some of the descriptions of the way that the guy talks about Adara was just very... It felt like it was written by a man. The fact that he's like, oh, I can't help but stare at her breasts, and oh, sure, she's so sexual, and like all these comments, I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? It's so annoying. Like, it was so annoying. Not only that, there's just so many different things that I had problems with. Not only that, but on top of that, we have like the main character, the main male, the love interest. I hated him. I didn't find him attractive at all. I didn't care about the romance, and which sucks because it's a fantasy romance, and that's a big importance to the story. I didn't care. I didn't want them together. That's how much I hated this man compared to our main character. Adara was fine. If it was just Adara and we were just following her, like, it probably would have been like a 3-star. But throw in this male love interest, and I hated him so much. Oh my gosh, you have no freaking idea. Not only that, Adara just found out that she had powers, right? She just found out that she could control all these different things, all these different elements or whatever. I'm not going to go into it because I don't want to spoil it, just in case you do want to read it. And she just found out, literally like a day later or like a couple days later, she already knows how to use her powers, not to like the fullest to the max, but she's able to control them enough to like do some damage to people. How do you control your magic that fast? she has never had a mentor. She didn't even know she had these powers, and she's able to do some damage and control them that quickly. It was just so unrealistic. It made no sense. Was this fast-paced? Yes. But it didn't feel fast-paced. In fact, it felt rushed. It felt rushed. And there was too much going on all at once. And I didn't like any single second of anything that happened in here. Anticlimactic. Just didn't hate it. Just hated it. I hated it. This was the lowest rated book for me of this year. It was a 1 star. I didn't want to DNF it because I was like, maybe the very end will save it. Because I have the whole series. I have the whole trilogy. No. And I was telling myself, I was trying to convince myself, you have the whole trilogy, just finish the rest. Just finish the rest. I hated it that much to the point where I'm like, I'm gonna unhaul the whole series. I don't even want to attempt to read the 2nd and 3rd book at this point. So that's it. That's the worst of the worst, you guys. Let me know, what were your worst books of the year? Please also stay tuned for the top 24 books of 2024. And thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making it. If you liked any of these books, please take my reviews with a grain of salt. Please don't take anything too personally or offensively. Everybody is different. Everybody has different opinions. So please just know this is just me ranting. And if you guys enjoyed any of these books that I talked so much shiznit about, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Okay? I'm sorry. But they didn't work for me. That doesn't mean that it's not going to work for you. Anyways, you guys, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!